you want a better life?
Yeah!
You want a better life? You better believe it. Because what we believe, what we think about, is what we're going to get in life. My talk today is titled, The Law of Mental Equivalence. And this was one of Ernest Holmes' terms, mental equivalence. Not something that we usually use every day. So we're going to talk about that and what it really means for us. In the Science of Mind textbook, on page 279, Ernest says, if we believe, or if we know that the power with which we are dealing is a principle and not a personality. So he's talking about God here being the power. And if God is a principle, not a personality is going to favor some people over other people. And that's not the way God is. God is a principle. It sees good in all, and it treats all the same. It's the law side of God that treats everybody the same. In the Bible, it talks about the rain falls on the just and the unjust. That's the principle of God, and that's what Ernest is talking about here. So if we know that the power with we're dealing is a principle and not a personality, if we know and believe that mind is the only actor, cause, effect, substance, intelligence, truth, and power that there is, if we have a real embodiment, then we can demonstrate. We can create. If we realize that the only power there is God, and that is our power, and we use that power through our minds. So that's what Angie was talking about and singing about here. If you want a better life, start with your mind. And you better believe it. Because it all has to be in alignment in order for us to facilitate and create what it is that we want in our lives. If you've been around our philosophy for very long, you've heard people say that everything is created twice. First in mind, and then in form. Or as Robin says here, first in mind and then in reality. So in what we see. We create things in our minds first. So think about this. The chair you're sitting in, the screen, the projector, the lights, our clothes that we wear. Somebody had to have that thought of, I'm going to create this. I'm going to make this. And so they have this prototype in their mind, this vision of it in their mind. And then once they have it clear in their mind, they can create that prototype in form. They can tweak it and make it just exactly what they want, and then have final production. But everything starts with a thought. Everything starts with a thought. And then we can bring it into form, into reality. So that's our process of creation here. The law of mental equivalence that we're talking about today, this was Ernest's term, and he defines mental equivalent as having a subjective idea of a desired experience. So in other words, a clear vision, knowing what you want. He says, as we bring ourselves to a greater vision than the range of our present concepts. So in other words, getting out of what we think right now and creating a better picture, a different picture. Then we can induce a greater concept and thereby demonstrate more in our experience. So when we can vision it in our minds, we can create it in our lives. But it's our work to do. It's our own work. And nobody can do that for us. The Church of Perpetual Responsibility. Right? Some of you have told me that. So the big point for me here is that I have to make sure I have that clear mental picture in my mind of what it is I want. When I first came into Science of Mind, My practitioner would say, well, Rick, what do you want? I don't know. I want good. Well, I think that's what Wayne was reading about. If you give a mixed signal to spirit, you're going to get a mixed result. So we have to be clear. We have to take time to understand exactly what is it that we want. And then we can create that. But if we don't know what exactly we want, we're just going to get whatever happens, right? So we can direct the universe to create, can be called the law of attraction, but we can create that, but we have to be clear about what it is we want. So many times in our experience, we don't take the time to be clear about what it is we want. We just move through life because we're busy doing and don't really take the time to go within and figure out what it is that we really want. So spend some time. This is your homework for this week. Spend some time thinking about what you really want in your life. No matter who you are, what stage of your life you're in, what is it that you really want in your life? Think about it. Feel it. See it. Know it. Smell it. Taste it. So that then you can create it for yourself. And it will happen. You put that out into the universe and it will happen. But we have to have that mental equivalent. You know, Ernest Holmes, as our founder here, studied all these different religions and looked for what was the same in these religions. What were the golden threads of truth, he called it. And so this law of mental equivalence, as Ernest labeled it, is one of those golden threads of truth. That what we think about will bring about. The law of attraction. What we know is what we'll be able to demonstrate. Ernest studied Thomas Troward. And Thomas Troward, in the Edinburgh Lectures, said, the only action of mind is thought. Didn't Ernest say everything starts in our thought? So it wasn't an original thought that Ernest had. Troward said this before him. The only action of mind is thought. And it is for this reason that by our thoughts we create corresponding external conditions. So in other words, Troward is saying it starts in our thoughts and then it manifests in our external conditions. You see, the philosophy of science of mind isn't a direct revelation from God. This is one thing that makes our philosophy different from many churches, where their founder may say, you know, God told me this. This was revealed to me from Spirit. Ernest said, I didn't get any direct revelation from God. I studied all of these religions to pull from them what were those truths, what were the things that were the same in all of them. Because every religion is going to have a little bit of truth and a little bit of story to it. And so we want to look at what is the truth. And truth is, we create with our minds here. So, Thomas Troward is one that said that, and he's somebody that really blessed and changed Ernest Holmes' life. Ernest said, reading Troward is like drinking water. It was very easy for him, and he needed to read that and see that somebody else had the same philosophy that he did. There was another New Thought teacher here that influenced Ernest a lot, and that was Emma Curtis Hopkins. Emma Curtis Hopkins wrote Scientific Mental Practice, was her main book here that she taught from. And she has the same concept, but Emma taught in a way that it was down to earth. It was everyday speaking. And so she was talking in her book about when we get, as she calls it here, when we lose sight of what we want in life. So we don't have that clear mental picture. And she says, then we begin to feel low-spirited and dissatisfied. Today we'd say we got depressed, probably. That would be Emma's low-spirited and dissatisfied. And so she says in there, describing our good will bring it to our sight again. So thinking about what we want will bring it back into our sight, into our mental picture here. You will feel less inspiration when you're mourning, whining, complaining. But when you praise and describe the good, you feel full of spiritual fervor. So Emma talked in everyday language for her. She said complaining and whining are only exhibitions of the great desert spots in your character. She'd say it like it was. You must fill up the deserts with rain and fertilizer. I'm surprised she didn't call it something else. You must transform your moments of complaining by praise and description of the good in the universe. So isn't that what we've been talking about? Is what we think about is what we're going to have happen in our lives. If we describe the good, if we talk about the good that's happening, if we know that we are one with Spirit, then we have unlimited possibilities available for us. Are you ready to step into something different than what you've always had? Angie's saying, if you want a better life, you better believe it. You start with your mind. And so what we have in our mind is what we're going to be creating. We can say lofty words, great words, and sound really intelligent and really nice. But if we don't believe that in our hearts, the universe is going to know that we don't believe it. And guess what is going to manifest? Not the lofty words we say, but what we truly believe in our hearts. It's kind of a hidden belief. In some of our classes, we talk about hidden beliefs that we have and trying to uncover those so that we know what's really guiding our life. If you always get stuck at some point in your life, there's probably a hidden belief there that's holding you back. And so if you want a better life, you have to create that yourself. And you start by understanding what it is you want and then go for it. So I want to share a story with you. There was a local dog contest, not your typical dog contest, but this one had an unusual contest in it, and it was a dog jumping contest. They were down to the last 2 dogs in the contest. There was the feisty brown dog, who was full of bounce and keen to please his master. And there was his sleek black opponent, who seemed full of poise and confidence. Each dog was given 3 attempts to make the jump from the ground up to a little level on a wall. They had 3 attempts to do it. So they started with a wall at a certain level. The feisty brown dog, he jumped, struggled, and then fell, not making it to the top. He was caught lovingly by his master and encouraged to go ahead and try again. And he tried again. The second time, he almost made it, but he fell again. The third and final time he was able somehow to manage to claw his way up to the top and get on top of that board. It was the black dog's turn. He stood there, was given the command by his master, and jumped up the first time. They moved the board up a little higher for the dogs to jump to. The feisty dog, every time they moved the board up, would miss it on the first attempt and the second attempt. But somehow on the third attempt, he always managed to claw his way up to the top and get on that board. The black dog, each time, would stand there very poised. When given the command, would jump up on top. The crowd got really uncomfortable because it was obvious that the black dog could do this and the brown dog was struggling a lot. And they thought, why don't the judges just call this off and say the black dog's the winner? But they didn't do that. And they kept going. Finally, they raised it up even higher. The little brown dog jumped up on the first attempt, missed it, and fell. Tried a second time and missed it. The third time, he clawed his way up to the top and sat on top of the board. The black dog sat there, was given his command, and he jumped and missed it. The first time in the contest, he had missed it. He had 2 more attempts, and his master was coaxing him to try again, but the black dog would not even try again. He refused. The brown dog won the contest. What do you think was the mental equivalent of each of those dogs? Do we allow things in life to hold us back where we think, this is what I can do, and that's all I can do? And so we stop when we've reached that limit. The brown dog, you see, had that mental equivalent of wanting to please his owner and wanting to get to the top, no matter what it was, how high the board went. And so he kept trying more and more. We have that choice in our lives. We can recognize that we are one with God, and being one with God and having that spiritual nature, we are unlimited. And so things that we thought we never could do, we can do. We just have to see it in our minds, set our intention for it, and then work for it. We don't need to be like the black dog, that when we fail once, we stop. We probably wouldn't have lights today if Thomas Edison would have stopped. Was he the one that did the light bulbs? If he stopped with his first attempt to make light and it didn't work. He had hundreds of attempts to make light and it didn't work. So we may have times that we fail something in life, but we get a chance to try again. You know, it's that adage about, it's not how many times you fail, it's how many times you're willing to get back up and try again. That's the important thing. And that takes faith. Ernest Holmes describes faith as a mental attitude which is so convinced of its own idea, which so completely accepts it, that any contradiction is unthinkable and impossible. So when we know clearly that we want to do something and that we can do something because we are one with Spirit, then that unlimited possibility can open before us. We have to see it in our minds. In this same chapter of Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes tells a story. He tells a story to explain mental equivalence. And he says there are 4 men that each had jobs, A, B, C, and D, he called them. A made $15 a week. Now remember, he wrote this in 1927. And I thought about, should I say $15 an hour? But then I thought, then if they read the textbook, they're going to say he lied to us. So he said, A made $15 a week. B made $50 a week. C made $75 a week, and D made $100 a week. All 4 men lost their jobs. They all 4 went to the same practitioner for a prayer at different times, but they all went. And the practitioner prayed with them, knowing that they would get their right and perfect job, that it would be revealed to them. And in time, all 4 men got a new job. A got a job paying $15 a week. B got a job paying $50 a week. C paying $75, and D got a job paying $100 a week. So Ernest said, if it was the same practitioner praying the same prayer for all 4 of them, knowing that God is changeless, why didn't they all get a job getting paid the same? And he answers it. It's because of their mental equivalent of what they thought thought their work was worth. You see, A thought that he should be making $15 a week. B thought he should be making 50, the other 75 and 100. Do we limit ourselves? And do we limit Spirit moving in our life? Because this is all we think we're worthy of? That's why I stand up here all the time talking about unlimited possibilities that are available to us. We just have to get clear in our minds what it is we want and move past those hidden beliefs that hold us back. Those things that say, really, you think you can make $100 a week? You think you are worthy of that? Well, heck yes. Because you know what? I'm one with Spirit, and Spirit doesn't limit me. So our mental equivalent can push us forward and allow us to create in life, or it can hold us back. And that's why the mental work of knowing what we want in life is so important. I have a final story that I'd like to share with you. This is the story of Moses. And according to the Army's Quartermaster General, who this story said, obviously, the Quartermaster General didn't have enough to do, he figured out what it would have taken for Moses to be with his people in the wilderness here. And he reported that Moses would have had to have 1,500 tons of food each day to feed the Israelites in the wilderness. Just think about this. To bring that much food in each day, he said it would take 2 freight trains, at least a mile long. And of course, in Moses' day, they didn't have freight trains. So how are they going to get that in there? He said firewood would be needed to cook the food, and it would take 4,000 tons of wood and a few more freight trains, each a mile long, in order to cook the food for just one day. Well, yes, of course, they would need to have water. And if they had water for drinking and just a little bit to do some dishes, it would take 11 million gallons of water each day. That would require freight train with tanker cars 1,800 miles long just to bring water in. I don't know how they figure all this stuff out, but evidently he had a very mathematical mind. He said each time they camped at the end of the day, a campground would be 2/3 the size of the state of Rhode Island. It would require 750 square miles for the campground. Now, do you think Moses figured all this out before he left Egypt? No, I don't think so. I know that Moses believed that God would take care of him. His complete faith was in God, in Spirit, that all of the needs of every person would be met. And so in that strong faith, he was able to lead the people and to lead them through the wilderness. Do you think he worried every day about, am I going to have food? When am I going to invent the trains to bring in all the food and the wood we need? The water? No. He knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that God would provide whatever was needed. And it was provided. Because as Jesus said, it's done unto us as we believe. And so Moses believed, and it was done. What is it that you believe about your life? This is your challenge this week. To spend some time getting clear about exactly what you want in life. And then creating that mental picture so that it can outpicture in your physical life. You can create it, but you have to think of it first. You have to be clear, and you have to embrace it with your heart. Your mind may say, this sounds really good, but if your heart's not believing it, it's not going to be accomplished. So we get to work on opening our hearts to the faith that yes, God can do this for me, through me, and all around me. We live in an infinite universe. Spirit is everywhere, and we are ready to step into that faith. Let us pray. I know that as we turn within, we have that source of unlimited possibilities within us. Spirit is so willing to give us our good, to create that spiritual prototype, that mental equivalent, to help us work with our minds to expand to more than what we have right now. And in that expansion, I know that good and more good is coming to us. Only good lies before us. And we claim it. We claim it each morning. We claim it throughout the day. That there are blessings for our lives. And that as we step into the fullness of our spiritual lives, we are able to bless others in their life as well. I know it for each one of us, that as we go from this place, we understand and we work on that clear mental picture of what we want. And in doing that, we are grateful. We say thank you, Spirit, for unlimited possibilities, for more than what we have now. Thank you, God. I release my word, and together we say, and so it is.